Good afternoon from the Seward House Museum and the resumption of our Curator Talk series. Neither of us standing in front of you today in Mr. Seward's office are curators here at the Seward House. We're the education team. I'm Jeff Ludwig, Director of Education.
And I'm Zach Finn, the Education and Outreach Coordinator.
It's I wouldn't say a beautiful fall day. It's a little wet, a little dreary, but kind of a perfect mid-fall day. The leaves are bright colors. They're beginning to fall from the trees. And we are only a week out from our Haunted History walking tours, a really popular event we hold here every year as we get ready for Halloween. This year, they'll be running from October 25th through October 30th, 6 and 7 o'clock p.m. You can read more on our website or give us a call at 315-252-1283. To get ourselves in the mood for Halloween and thinking about how the Sewards may have marked October, we've, with our curator's permission, pulled from the shelves some classic volumes from one of America's truly first great men of letters, Washington Irving, who's become synonymous with this season and Halloween, particularly through his classic, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, a popular story as much in 1820 when it's published as it is today, depicting the story of Ichabod Crane, a school teacher in Sleepy Hollow near Tarrytown, New York, who meets his fate when he meets the iconic Headless Horseman. The Seward family would have been very familiar with this tale, and of course its author, very popular here. Zach and I are standing right in front of the complete works of Washington Irving in Mr. Seward's office. But who was this Washington Irving, Zach?
And Washington Irving is most remembered as being one of the first American authors to really gain notoriety and respect in England. He applied themes of traditional folklore and set them in an American, specifically a Hudson Valley setting. And along with being a famous author, renowned for his short stories, Washington Irving would also be a historian, as well as an ambassador to Spain throughout the 1840s. So while visiting Auburn, New York, it makes sense that he would stop by future Secretary of State William Henry Seward's house.
Sure does. So Irving's born in 1783, spends a youth in Europe pining for North America and what he sees as the mystery, the beauty, and a little bit of the horror in this expanding and vast new republic. And he becomes famous for his depictions of New York, the Hudson Valley, and into central and western New York as well. These gripping tales of just how terrifying it could be to live on what many consider to be the edge of the civilized world. And he coins a lot of terms that still remain in our parlance here in New York. He coins Gotham as the name for New York City, Knickerbocker for New Yorkers. And in 1838, early autumn, Irving, who's already achieved some literary celebrity through works like The Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crown, 1820, is passing through central and western New York. He's attending a wedding of a nephew of his in Geneva, and who should discover this but William Henry Seward, who's about 2 months away from being elected to his first term as New York governor, a rising star. He's been a state senator, a rising force in New York Whig politics. And of course, he invites Irving to make a visit here to 33 South Street. Irving brings a young niece of his. They spend a day and an evening. I presume they spent time in Seward's library, talking books, perhaps American politics. And one of the things that we know they do together is they go shopping. They head downtown, just a few blocks from us, to the Derby and Miller Publishing House and Bookstore, where one of the proprietors, a James Derby, is there to greet Seward as he walks in the door, and Seward asks Derby if he has any Washington Irving on the shelf to sell. Derby, of course, did. Irving's a very popular author at this point, so he directs Seward to Irving's books, and Seward pulls them out, purchases them right then and there, and in front of Derby says, "I want them signed by the author," and slides them over to Irving, who signs them all for Seward. And Derby recalled later the first time he'd ever met Irving face to face. Quite a day for him, as it was for Seward. While Seward is very clearly enamored of this literary light and of this day, interestingly enough, in a letter that Mrs. Seward, Frances, writes to her sister Lizette in Canandaigua, she paints a slightly different picture of the experience. And I'm going to read that to you. I think it's probably because if she was familiar with Irving, it was through his books, or maybe some of the iconic and highly flattering portraits, paintings that existed of Irving. This was the man that perhaps Frances was expecting to meet in autumn 1838. This is the gentleman she meets instead, and in her typical wry humor, she describes meeting the author like this. He, that's Irving, came home with Henry and spent the evening. How different he appeared from the Washington Irving I had pictured in my fancy. He is a stout gentleman, about 5.5 feet high, very ordinary face, nothing about it to distinguish him from common mortals. Voice is like old Dr. Rudd's. Perhaps he has a cold. He is very plain, gentlemanly, and affable, but in no way remarkable in his appearance. Not a particle of ostentation about him. He does not seem in the least sensible that he has written so many beautiful books. But he had books that the Seward family children would have spent a lot of time with in this house, reading aloud to each other, to their parents, and books that we can still read today. So as you get ready for the Halloween season, we hope perhaps you'll pull Washington Irving off the shelf, reread Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and maybe come here for Haunted History?
Perfect, and those will run from October 25th until October 30th. We'll have tours at 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. each night, and we hope to see you there.